Worldwide, we're joined today by some Survivor royalty. Obviously, very few people get to play the game of Survivor. I think it's 600 plus in the US, less than 40 in New Zealand, only about 100 in Australia. But even fewer get the chance to carry the title home, win the title of Sole Survivor, and win it all. And today we are very fortunate to be joined by one of those people who have won the greatest game of all. It is the lovely Lisa Stanger from Survivor New Zealand, Thailand. Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
It's great to have you on. And as I was saying to you before the show, I think you're the second Survivor New Zealand castaway we've had on the show. We had Dylan on for Survivor South Africa last year. And really, really glad to hear your insights on this one, because obviously, as a winner, you have a much better handle on the game as to the people who unfortunately haven't won the game. And you were also a very ruthless player when you did play on your first season. What have your thoughts been on this season so far? Obviously, Blood vs. Water complicates it a little bit.
Yeah, it's long.
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so many episodes. Australian reality TV. Oh my goodness. I was listening last week and you were saying like MasterChef is like, I don't know, 100 and something episodes.
Yeah, MasterChef, I think, has 13 weeks for 5 episodes each. So, yeah, if you do the maths on that, it ends up to be like 70, 65, I guess. I can't do
Yeah.
maths in my head. 65 if it's 13 times 5. But Australian reality TV is ridiculous. But you've managed to catch up and you're all caught up to date now.
Managed to catch up. Okay, what are the things? Yep, I like Blood versus Water. Some frustrations with the season as a viewer. But yeah, I love the cinematic quality of Australian Survivor. I love like the soundtrack, the effort they put into the challenges, although where are the puzzles? Yeah, so like pluses and minuses, but I'm not an Australian Survivor expert because there's a few seasons I haven't seen. I've only seen a few. So yeah, I'm not really, I don't know, I'm not best placed to, talk about the status of the Australian Survivor picture or whatever, but I don't know, that's just my ideas so far.
Yeah, you did mention there's been few puzzles this season. I think there was only really the one puzzle, which was when they had the rope that they had to pull and then try and balance the little diamond triangle puzzle, I think it was. But other than that, I mean, you can't really call that a puzzle at the end of the day. It's more dexterity.
Yeah,
it is a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that so was it the puzzle and Jonathan did it like they released a video of him doing it before the episode?
I think that was
Yeah.
it might have been.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same puzzle when you've got to hold the rope and if the bucket
correct.
isn't full of water, it like
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
they had
so
the slide puzzle. Yeah, the
yeah.
logo puzzle. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Jonathan did this video of it, and all the pieces were in order, and I was like, oh, that just must be because so he can do a quick video. But then I watched the episode, and I was like, oh no, like, this is not a puzzle. Yeah, so frustrated, man. I don't know. I would be very frustrated if I was on. It makes me think. Yeah, if I was ever on Australian Survivor, I don't think my puzzle skills would help me out. I mean, Nick can attest to that probably. So
Yeah, well, I spoke with Andy, obviously, who was the first booter this season, and is known for his puzzle prowess. I've spoken with Andy and Kate as well, who are both puzzle masters, and I think they were very disappointed not to get the chance to do puzzles. But I mean, I keep saying hopefully we get a puzzle in the next episode or the next episode after that, but you never really know with Australian Survivor.
I mean, it sort of seems like you do know, and the answer is you're not getting a puzzle.
Well,
Puzzles, tough luck.
yeah,
Like,
that is unfortunate, but certainly one of the things Australian Survivor like to do well is the car giveaway, which was obviously the first episode this week. We saw the Isuzu D-Max up for grabs. Obviously, a nice thing to drive away with. The title of Sole Survivor would be nicer. Elisa, I'm sure you're aware of the car curse in the game of Survivor. We saw it many times throughout. Obviously, Boston Rob in Survivor All-Stars, Colby Donaldson in Survivor the Australian Outback, and many more throughout the history of Survivor worldwide. Jordy won this first challenge of the week to win the Isuzu D-Max, which he was very excited by. Jordy has been such a great challenge beast this season.
yeah. The car curse, I think the people that you mentioned, like, yep, they all lost the game, but none of them lost because they won the car.
Yeah.
And Jordy did
Cindy Hall.
not get.
Cindy Hall of Guatemala, if you recall that one, that was all due to the car. But
Do
it
you
is a
think
bit of
she
an
would have
unfortunate
been
curse.
the winner of Survivor Guatemala had she not won the car, though, honestly, in your heart of hearts?
Yeah, it's always hard to say. But
Um,
I think it
I
does
don't
paint
know.
a target.
But is that hard to say that Cindy probably wouldn't have won Survivor Guatemala regardless? But I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Jordy's certainly been doing well in the challenges, which is good for him because
Mm.
you have to have something you're good at in Survivor, and challenges might be his thing.
That's right. That's right. Well, it seems like he's good at the challenges, but certainly and good at recognizing who has the idols. But not good at the
Well,
social game. It seems not good at
when
convincing
he's
when
told
he's
about
told.
them,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
not
That's
too
certainly right.
much valor there for people telling you someone has an idol. That's
Yeah, yeah.
not really a read.
But yeah, we saw obviously Jordy outlasted Mark in that reward challenge, and he got to take 3 people with him to the
Mhm.
Survivor Cinema on a trip to the Outback, picking Jordan, David, and Michelle to join him. They're obviously blood versus water. We've never really seen in the past them get family visits or videos from home. Obviously, 48 days in Australian Survivor, you would be missing your family, but we did see each of the 4 remaining members in the game get a nice message from home, which is always great to see. Despite even the fact that Jordy lost Jesse and Jordan still had Josh in the game,
Mhm.
certainly nice to see them get messages from home in the Survivor Cinema.
Yeah, really nice. I actually, I was on the team that won that challenge in New Zealand Survivor,
Hmm.
and I got a video message from home. Similar thing. They said we were watching a movie, but then they put up videos of our loved ones, and yeah, it's a really Survivor bucket list moment. And New Zealand Survivor is just a week or so compared to Australian Survivor, so I can't imagine how much they're missing their family. It was cool to see Brianna.
Yeah, Brianna. Yeah, yeah,
Brianna, yeah, it was very cool to see Brianna. Um, yeah, no, it was nice reward, and yeah, it was nice. Difficult to know who to choose. I liked his move of choosing
yeah.
Dave. That's a real
Mm,
good cop out move, just choosing the person who did really well on the challenge. Um, yeah, and then
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's almost
Jordan
worth
came.
not winning
Yeah.
things to be able to not have to choose those people.
Well, we saw that in Survivor Ghost Island with Wendell Holland, if you recall that when he won the family visit and then decided to basically unwin the reward and go to Ghost Island himself.
Hmm.
It always is a peculiar predicament to try and pick those people. How hard is it to try and pick people to go on rewards with you and obviously leave people out back at camp, and obviously it gives them the opportunity to strategize as well. It's always a risk to take.
Yeah, I imagine it's really difficult. I was never in a position to do it because I
Mm,
never really won anything apart from the main thing. But yeah, definitely a poison chalice. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. And Geordie was in a bad position no matter what he
yeah.
did. So it's like, well, he chose some people that he, thought he could maybe make inroads with, but seems like he didn't in the short term at least.
Yeah, that's right. I think for Jordy, it's been very hard for him to try and get people to believe him at this point, especially after what happened with Jesse going home and just the fact that he's been such a brash player and really the only person that's actually speaking out against Mark and Sam. In fact, probably the only person that's really playing the game outside of Mark and Sam at this point. I think Jordy has had an uphill battle really to try to convince the others that uh, there are bigger threats out there, and especially these singles can actually band against the couples and try and get people out. Do you find it a little bit frustrating that people aren't willing to make big moves at this point in the game, or it's always hard to have that conservative gameplay versus some people that want to play aggressive?
Yeah, well, the thing is, everyone who is still sticking with this tight group thinks they've got the way to the top of the tight group.
Mm,
And they must be very sure to be still sticking in. I mean, there's a variety of reasons people stick with alliances, but I mean, surely at like what is it, season 6 of Australian Survivor?
yeah.
Season 8
Uh,
of Australian Survivor, if you include the old
oh,
ones?
okay. Yeah. This would be season 9, I think, would be including the old
Wow,
ones.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Time
like
flies by.
so you'd be thinking that people would be thinking about getting to the end. But there is a variety of reasons people might want to stay with things. Sorry, I'm blathering a bit. What was your question? About
Uh,
frustrating that people
yeah.
aren't making a move. No, well, I mean, I
Yeah.
think it speaks to the relationships that Jordy's built up to this point. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, if you don't have the relationships with people that you can say to them, hey, this person's got an idol and they believe you, that's on you.
That's right, and I think you could say a similar thing for a lot of the singles as well. We obviously seen KJ, Mel and Michelle at the beginning of the merge when they tried to make moves against Josh. Neither of them were really heard, and I think what has been a bit of a downfall this season, especially being blood versus water, is people who've really prioritized those blood relationships over making inroads with others, which I think is something that Mark and Sam have done a really good job at trying to gain a good relationship with all these players in the game.
Mm.
Whereas I feel like others have sort of fallen down by the wayside and relied so heavily on their partner in the game that they haven't really made those inroads and tried to create those social connections. I think that might be a reason why we're seeing this lack of big moves, is because no one, as you said, Jordy doesn't have that social capital in the game. And I don't think any of these singles do either.
Yeah, what would be your example of someone of a couple that's just sort of based on their, focusing on their blood water to the expense of their their blood connection to the
Well,
expense of,
yeah,
yeah, who are you got in
I
mind when
think
you're saying
I
that?
think I
Because
think what we saw with Benny and Shay in particular, when Benny was swapped onto the other tribe, obviously, I feel like Shay was very locked into that. Obviously, at the time, she was on the outside of her tribe, but
yeah,
then again, she also was sort of speaking out against her potential allies, trying to save her partner in the game when really the writing was on the wall, and it is a peculiar position to be in the game, obviously, because in the game of Survivor, you're putting yourself forward first. And I
yeah.
think in Blood versus Water, obviously, it does complicate things. It muddies the water. I mean, hence the name Blood versus Water, in trying to maintain both of these relationships. And would you ever play Blood versus Water? Because it does make it very, very difficult to try and maneuver your way and actually take the path that best suits you, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm very careful to keep my. Well, this is tricky. I have been very careful when I played Survivor. I was
Mm,
like a very different person, very different mindset, and it was quite easy for me to keep it sort of business and personal. And yeah, but now I don't think I would approach it in quite the same way. Well, I wouldn't. I don't think I could sort of just switch off that anymore.
yeah.
And so I think if I was out there with like a friend or a loved one or oh gosh, I think I would really struggle in a way that people might not expect me to struggle because oh yeah, Lisa, like she's ruthless, she's strategic, she'll cut you. And I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know if I would anymore. I might just, I might actually live up to that mum archetype of just being like the crying mum who's like, oh, but I just love everyone. Oh, just vote me
Yeah.
out, dear. It's okay. Like, oh, I don't even know.
Yeah. I
It's
think
it's two
Sandra
very
was.
different things to incorporate.
Yeah, I think Sandra was very not so much similar in that she would be so passive and not play an aggressive game. But I feel like Sandra was similar in this season, wanting Nina to succeed over herself. Obviously, I think that desire to wear that crown again was still there. But certainly, it did seem like she was sort of passing on the torch. And I do think
Well,
that's similar. We saw with David early on when Brianna was cut out of the game. He sort of grappled with where he stood going forward, given that it was really Brianna's journey, and she was the massive fan as well.
I think with the way that past winners have been treated in Australian Survivor, the way
Mm,
that American players have been treated in Australian Survivor, the way returning players have been treated in Australia, like I mean, Sandra knows she's not winning Australian Survivor,
yeah,
so I don't think she's doing a particularly. I don't think it's really a choice for her to be trying to support Nina. I think that's the only road for her because she's not going far and she's not going to win.
yeah. And I mean, ultimately, she didn't go far in the game because she was sniped by her
Yeah.
daughter. And Jordy was obviously one of those players that was making those moves early on. And I think Jordy and Jesse have really been those prolonged players who have actually managed to survive despite having a massive target put on their back. And perhaps a lot of that may come down to their strength in challenges.
Hmm.
I mean, we saw Jordy win, I think it was 5 consecutive challenges. I think this might have been his 5th consecutive challenge win, the
Wow.
Isuzu D-Max challenge,
Yeah.
which is a very impressive streak to go on, especially when the target has been up against him really since the merge.
Hmm. Yeah, it is, for sure. Yeah. I mean, but when people are like, when I'm always really cautious when the TV is presenting people as big players,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, but they're still around, and no one's saying, hey, why should we get rid of these big players? I don't know. It's just, you don't, I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I find, especially with Australian Survivor, it is hard to read the edit. I mean, there are obviously those overwhelmingly positive portrayals who we get basically all the airtime devoted to. And then again, as we've seen with Michelle and KJ, David as well, we haven't really seen much of them, so we don't really know what they're doing in the game, which I think is a downfall and something that would be good to actually get their perspective and their desires to make moves.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating as a viewer, and you can't, Survivor at its best is a bit like a murder mystery. The author gives you, the editors or the author give you enough information, and then when you get to the end and the person wins, you go, oh, I see this story and it makes sense. And Australian Survivor, in my experience so far, hasn't really done that. It's like, I don't know what sort of book it's like. It's like a children's picture book. This is David. David's really good at Survivor. David wants to win Survivor. David won Survivor. Like, there's no, it's like a children's picture book written at the level of children who can't have twists in the narrative because they don't understand it. But it's like, I think we could probably understand it, and it would help our overall understanding of the show if you understood what, like, there's a reason Michelle and KJ and Dave and Chrissy, there's a reason they're sticking with these people. And maybe that reason isn't strategic. Maybe, they just don't know what they're doing, or maybe they remind them of someone, or they've built a really strong relationship, whatever. It's engaging and it's important, and we're just not getting it. And it's like very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I really do like that analogy of Australian Survivor being like a children's book. And I wish Australian Survivor editing was similar to US Survivor or Survivor South Africa. I'm not sure if you watched the most recent season of Survivor South Africa, but that was a real big red herring at the end as to who would win. And of course, with the US Survivor, Survivor 41 in particular, that edit was very whodunit murder mystery type, as you mentioned there. But yeah, Australian Survivor loves to be brash with the editing and show off the big players. And it is unfortunately we don't get to see the perspectives of players like David and Michelle, but certainly Mark and Sam at this point in the game. And we've only really seen the game through their eyes, but they've done a great job at maneuvering the game socially and trying to keep these people like David, Chrissy, in their alliance, despite them time and time again getting offers from the other side to come over to the dark side and try and work against this active power couple in the game.
Yeah. There was a scene in the latest episode where Mark and Sam and Jordan and Josh.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. There's always J names.
Too many J names. Yeah.
Yeah. I was about to say like Jordan and Jesse. I'm like, no, it's not right. And the four of them were talking about who they were gonna vote out. And Chrissy like walks up and she's like, okay, so who are we voting out? And it's just like that, like they're gonna vote out another single, and then after that person and after that person, like it's probably okay. Well, I don't think it's gonna be her. I think they're gonna try and take her to the end, but still, it's just like the writing's on the wall. Like, but we're just not getting enough of the story to really know. So you can't say, oh, Chrissy's so silly for not making a move or whatever. Because during my season, people were saying, oh, Lisa's so stupid. Like right at the start, Lisa's like, oh, she's clearly on the bottom of Can Cow. Why isn't she making a move? It's like, because I wasn't on the bottom. Oh, she's clearly on the bottom of this. Why isn't she making a move? Because I was never on the bottom. Oh, she doesn't have a plan. She's going to lose. Like, no, I've definitely got a plan and I'm not going to lose. But at least in my show, it made me look like they put hints in there. They showed my confessional saying, oh, this is my plan. This is what I'm trying to do. But yeah, in Australian Survivor, they do not. And Chrissy and Dave and Kate, everyone's just like left to hang out to dry at the expense of like glorifying the players that, I don't know, Australian Survivor thinks are the, I don't even know what, the best survivors, the best TV, the people they're going to like want to put on Celebrity MasterChef later. Like, I'm not sure. Sorry, I know it's just getting really ranty. It's my main takeaway from Australian Survivor.
Honestly, Lisa, a lot of our podcasts toward the end, especially of our podcast, we usually do like to go on rants about the edit and people getting purpled. It's just been ridiculous this season. We had Gerald on last week, and obviously Gerald in his season was he got a very heavy purple edit. And it just seeing people like Mel and Michelle get I think Mel got 13 straight episodes before she got a confessional, which is just ridiculous. Like it's
Atrocious.
you think you
Atrocious.
go out to the outback and put your life on hold for 48 days and you get nothing to show for it. It is disappointing. But as you say, I'm not sure what it is I'm not sure why they like to give three players the majority of the airtime. It's really disappointing to see that those minority characters who might not play as big a role in the overall story, but at least they're still there for the final nine. Now we have a lot of players who still haven't got much airtime. David and Michelle are still there. Michelle's gone. David, Michelle, and KJ at the final 10 really not getting much airtime, which is disappointing to see. But yeah, we do like to rant about it because it is disappointing that Australian Survivor doesn't give those stories. And I think your analogy of Australian Survivor being like a picture book is very accurate because, I think they do like to dumb down things on Australian reality television, which is
Mhm.
unfortunate when we have a massive game like Survivor, which, as we know, it has so much strategy to discuss. Of course, we're sitting here on a podcast discussing the episodes now. There's so many people who like to look at the edit and dissect things and look at every player's best move into the game to move forward.
Mhm.
And it's hard when we don't see any of that at all.
No, no. It's like, and the dumbing down is unnecessary. Like, I don't know. Australian Survivor is already it's so challenge based. It's so
Mm,
physical. There's so many people on there who are just all about honor and mateship and like all that crap. And that it already I don't know. You don't need to dumb it down even more. I don't think. But
yeah, and I
yeah,
think
but just to go back to something you said about the edit,
mhm,
and like I don't know, maybe this is easy for me to say because I won, and like I don't know, other people might be listening to this and being like, well, of course you think that because you won, but there were things that I wish they'd put on the show and they hadn't, and there were episodes when I wasn't in it very much or whatever, and I've almost like forgotten now what was on TV and what wasn't because it
yeah,
is such a life-changing experience and that's the stuff that really sticks with you and so much of the good stuff doesn't even go on TV and like I'll never forget all of that stuff. And so I guess if you're not trying to, I don't know, build a career in the public eye or really want to get more Instagram followers or whatever, I mean, like, yeah, it's disappointing, but it's still, yeah, I don't know. You said that they go to the outback for 48 days and they've got sort of nothing to show for it, and that's not the case at all.
yeah,
It's you've got a lot to show for it. It's just it's hard to explain it to your friends and your family when you don't
mm,
have like the footage. But even when you do have the footage, it's still a very hard experience to explain to people. Like, I'd watch it every week and with, my friends and my family and things. And I'm just trying to explain to them what it was like or like the context around the little bit they showed on TV or what they cut out and how they put those two things together to make it seem like this. And it's just, the TV version is like it shows what happened, but it's like a funhouse mirror version of what happened.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, even people who don't really get shown on Survivor, they still have all of that whole like totally different, amazing life experience over all those days with all those relationships like inside them that will never that'll never like go away or doesn't matter that you didn't have footage of that or whatever. But
Absolutely,
again,
no.
I'm probably just being an obnoxious winner. Like,
Yeah. No, I think every player obviously has those moments that, are so special to them in the game and probably the most memorable experience in the island that just are never shown. And some of those moments aren't captured on cameras, others are, and they just don't ultimately fit the overall story arc. But no, you're right. I'm not saying that they get no experience from the show and they have nothing to show for it. But it is disappointing,
hmm,
not to see yourself on TV at the end of the day, especially when you go out here and you want your family to see what you've gone through and to understand that struggle.
yeah.
But they can't see it on TV at the end of the day. It is unfortunate, but
Mhm.
I just hope in the future that the edit is a little bit more level, and hopefully we do see that. But the majority of this week, well, we ultimately didn't see anything really happen at all, which is very unfortunate and
Yeah.
very symptomatic of Australian Survivor. Um, the crux of this week was really Jordy trying to pin the votes on Mark and Sam and trying his hardest to flush this idol. But it really did feel like for Jordy, he was just banging his head against a brick wall for the whole
Mhm.
week, and he couldn't
Yeah.
really get anyone through. Um, despite, I mean, in the last episode where Shay went home, we saw that David, or at least the edit showed that David was starting to become a little bit skeptical of Sam and how paranoid she was beginning to become about this idol and potentially votes coming up against her. And I think we saw some of those seeds start to be sown, but ultimately none of them came to fruition in any of these episodes this week
Mhm.
because as we discussed before, I think ultimately it came down to the fact that Jordy just couldn't be trusted because he is playing such an aggressive game, and we've seen him, be one of the driving forces to get rid of Sandra and be one of the driving forces to throw out the fact that Mark has an idol, and Jesse gave his idol to Sam, and all these big company statements. I did say to Gerald last week, it's almost like he's the boy who cried wolf, and no
Yeah.
one is believing him at this point.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. A scene that really stuck with me was when they were in purgatory and they're just about to go back to do the final duel or whatever.
Mm,
And I wrote it down. Jordy's just like because Jordy's pretty. He I don't know. He's not like me. He's quite sort of polished. And when he's
yeah,
talking to people, you can sort of see he's like trying to communicate and he's really communicating. It's all good. But then when they're just about to leave, I think I saw like a bit of his like just really like sort of inner self. And he just goes, okay, well, whatever we do, like, please just don't go back to them. Please. I was just like, yes, I feel you so much. Like, if I
yeah,
had the technology, I would make like a gif of that moment with him just saying, like, please, just don't. Why? Why is this happening? And yeah, I really, really felt for him in that moment. He just really does
yeah.
not want them to go back, and it just must be a survivor nightmare. Like, it reminds me of like Nick and Harry on All Stars, and um and Shawnee, but I can't remember when. I can't remember exactly when this happened, but they're just like, we need to flip. Let's flip. Can we flip?
Yeah.
Please flip. Why is no one flipping? Like, just no one flips and no one flips and no one flips. And then Dave
Yeah.
just wins. And it's just like, just a nightmare. Just like I've had literal nightmares since I've been back of being on Survivor and being in a situation like that and being like, look, please just make a move, make a move, make a move, and people don't. And Jordy's just in that situation, and it must suck so much.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Survivor Groundhog Day, obviously trying to make something happen and then nothing happening, and then waking up the next day and trying to make something happen. Trying to do little things different, so you wake up and everything is back to
Mhm.
normal.
Yeah,
Reminds
and
me
like
reminds me a
it.
little bit of Redemption Island with Matt Elrod. Trying to get rid of Boston
Oh,
Rob. He returns
yeah,
from Redemption Island and then goes straight back to Redemption Island again. It's just a circle. It just keeps going and going and going.
yeah, and Jordan must be like, okay, well, now these people have literally been voted out. So
Yeah,
surely they believe me. Come on, guys, we've got to stay strong. It's like having a friend who's in like a bad relationship or something, and you're like, no, don't text him, don't go back to him, don't do it.
yeah.
But there's just these drives you don't understand why people are doing things, and if you don't understand why people are doing what they're doing, like you won't be able to connect to them and make a change.
Yeah, and that's actually Gerald. When I was talking to him last week, he said playing Survivor is a bit like an abusive relationship. You, as soon as you get out of the relationship, you just want to come straight back to what you know, despite the fact that they, obviously, you're starving for 48 days. You
Mhm.
experience so much torment, so much stress, and I do think this is going to be similar for Shay and KJ. They'll come back into the game and see that really it is the same as what it was before. Mark and Sam were in control with Josh and Jordan as their sidekicks, but I do worry that they will be scared to make big moves. And Swap Nanu Bassa Roy here in the chat saying, I think the coming back of three players, especially the players who were on the outs, could be dangerous for Mark and Sam. But honestly, Lisa, I'm not sure that Shay and KJ will be willing to make those big moves to get rid of Mark and Sam. I think Mark and Sam will be jumping for joy because they're not going to make moves, it looks like.
Nah, they certainly will. Didn't you hear those promos? KJ was like, "Look, up until now, I haven't been. I've just been taking it easy. But now that I've been voted out, I'm gonna do something." I'm like, well,
Yeah.
"You go. I hope you do."
Yeah,
Surely.
yeah.
I mean, this would be like, I don't know, what's the I can't remember the name. Was it Shan who was went right to the end with David and All Stars?
Yep, Sean. Because
Shan and Moana.
Sean at the final, I think it was the final 6 with the, when they all wanted to go to Rocks, she said, "Oh, I'm going to flip to your side. I really want to work with you guys."
Yeah,
In
and
my mind, stupid. Just go to Rocks because you don't know that Sean's going to work with you. But then she never made the move to go
yeah.
away from David.
So this would be like that level of just keeping the status quo to the sacrifice of
Yeah,
your own game if they do not make a move. Like, yeah, I mean, this whole idea of, I mean, bringing back players, I don't like it. Like, you know, I'm Survivor purist. Okay, but bring back players if you want to. But bringing back 3 players at
yeah,
final 7, final 6, that is like, how do you plan for that? You know, like any
yeah,
move that happens after you execute a vote, like whether oh, actually it's a tribe swap or it's this, or I hate it. And luckily in Survivor New Zealand that never happened. Like, we did votes, we tricked people, we got them out, and then we never had to deal with them again into the jury. Like,
yeah,
oh, it's very,
yeah.
very difficult.
I found with this season especially, and I know that people love to hate on Redemption Island, and honestly, I'm one of those that doesn't like Redemption Island. But Australian Survivor gets into this tricky situation where they need these extra episodes to fulfill their 24 episode requirement.
Mm,
So they have to throw in all these silly twists, which frustrate all of us fans. And I almost felt like this would have been a good season to add in Redemption Island because it does add in, what, 2 extra votes, and it makes it somewhat fair. But then again, I think like you, Survivor at its purest form, you vote someone out and they're gone off the island. You don't get someone like Chris Underwood or Natalie Anderson that returns with 4 days left in the game and they go to final tribal council.
mm.
Because it's not fair when you're starving out there for 39 days and you're doing your all to try and maintain, your position in the game and getting rid of someone, and then all of a sudden they come back. It is a little bit silly.
That's, I mean, the art of Survivor is being able to get people out in a way
Hmm.
that only the person that you got out has that important bit of knowledge that could really screw you, or
Yeah.
is angry at you, like being able to maneuver that. And then as soon as you start bringing in people after that vote, it just loses something for me. But also I think it would just be really hard. Really,
Yeah.
really
Well,
hard.
well, even then, the art of Survivor is getting rid of people and having them not resent you when it comes to the jury, because that's the ultimate aim of the game, is to get the votes,
Yeah, yeah,
which is obviously what helped you in the end, is having those good relationships in the game. But I
yeah.
think Mark and Sam have done a very good job at maintaining those social relationships, because I feel like they've got a good stranglehold on the jury, and a lot of people respect the game they're playing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really gonna change once they find out that Sam was lying about the idol.
Yeah.
I I'm really of 2 minds on that decision, because yes, if people know her and Mark both have an idol, it's a really big threat on them, and that
Mm.
was a, really brutal move to pull on Jesse. But when people find out, oh, and like the closer to the end that people find out, oof,
Yeah.
like, if you're sending people to the jury who just found out, like at that tribal council, that they went home, oh, actually, this was a big lie the whole time. Oh, I can't imagine them being in the,
Yeah.
what are they going to say when they get there? When,
That's
when I
right.
when I voted out Matt, he didn't get there and say, Lisa's a liar who's been lying to me the whole time. She swore to me, but he was just like, wow, like, she good game. She
Mm.
actually, he supported me. And I don't know. I don't know. Like, you can't play that game of honor and then do this. I think
Yeah.
I don't think they're shaping the narrative quite right, but who knows? Who
Yeah, I
knows? We
certainly
don't know
think
because again, it's not enough.
Sam yeah, I think Sam will face a lot of resentment from the jury. And what we've seen, especially the move against Khan, I think Khan has probably gotten over that bitterness at this point. But you're right, taking the idol, I wouldn't say she stole the idol from Jesse, because Jesse really gave the idol to her, but then voting him out in the next episode. But you're right, not owning up to that and letting your closest alliance members into that, I think could be something that, sort of sours the jury if she does make it to final tribal council. I think Sam, certainly out of the two, um, is probably the least well positioned in the game. Mark certainly seems to have taken an approach where he's running the game, but he's really not making any emotional moves at this point, because I think Sam is actually taking a lot of the emotional brunt for him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it seems like Sam has those stronger relationships with everyone. And Mark is this trusted person that everyone wants to go along with. And he almost seems like someone that intimidates them and they don't want to go against him because they have this
Yeah.
strong relationship with Sam.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if he like everyone wants to go along with him. I think he just seems like he's in such a good position. People are
Mm,
afraid to pull up against him. Yeah, Sam is definitely being the like cattle catcher on the front of the Mark train at the moment. And I think that's a real big pity. I would have loved to seen her come back on a non-blood versus water season
yeah.
because yeah, the alliances and the relationships she built pre-merge seemed, pretty cool to me.
Yeah, that's right. And I think Sam did a great job, and Mark as well did a great job pre-merge. We saw him
Mm.
obviously all the way back to that first episode where Andy put the target on his back as a returning player, and Mark sort of stepped back, let him take all the heat and take on the role of leader, and went with Nina and said, "Well, look, we need to be, low key, keep the target off us for now. Try and make some strong social relationships, and hopefully that puts us in good standing, and that target ultimately shifts away from us." So I think Mark's done a good job in that sense. But you're right. I think Sam, as you call her, the cattle catcher at this point, she is the one that's bringing in everyone to the vote and trying to, make sure those good social bonds are there. I think she's doing a mixed job of that. I think it is a mixed bag because obviously she's lying to people's face, but
Like
also keeping them in the vote
vehemently
as well.
lying to their face as well.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like vehemently. And it's like, yeah, that might sell the lie, but then I don't know, I think that hurts.
yeah,
Like so, like it's a game, but it's still a personal thing. And yeah, I don't know. I've already said what I think. When you're playing a game that's really relying on being honest and sticking with an alliance, it's very tricky to flip it to then be like, oh, just joking. Actually, I'm really brutal and you should reward me for that. It's like, oh,
yeah.
I don't
And I
know.
mean,
It's a hard
it
flip to
comes
do.
back. Yeah, it comes back to Boston Rob and Amber in Survivor All Stars. Obviously, we saw that then, where Boston Rob cut Lex, and then cut Tom, and then cut Rupert, and then cut Alicia, and then cut Jenna. I think you could almost say Rob and Amber are the Mark and Sam are the Rob and Amber of this season, except it's in the reverse. And Mark is almost the Amber, who's the one that everyone likes because he's not cutting throats. But obviously,
Mm.
he's the one that is playing more of that Boston Rob role in terms of the intimidation, and no one wanted to go against him. But Sam is the one that's really executing the moves.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like Sam's agency certainly seems to have decreased since since the merge. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know. It's hard to tell, and it just yeah with this lack of edit information, you don't really know what everyone else's plans are, and I really want to know.
Yeah, I think we do want to know. And Tioni argue here in the chat. They say next vote has to be 5-4 with Juicy and Chrissy flipping right to get one of the pairings out, either Josh or Jordan. They wouldn't risk getting Mark or Sam next vote, surely. And I think it's going to be. It's an interesting position to be in with three players returning who are voted out. We've also got two pairs in Josh and Jordan and Mark and Sam. And I think I'm not sure they can make a move and get Jordy on their side at this point to get rid of one of those couples because I think Josh and Jordan ultimately see Jordy as being too big of a threat and they don't want to remove that meat shield at this point in the game, knowing that Jordy is someone that will try and expose those blood relationships and try and fracture those. I think almost in this situation, it's best for both couples really to get rid of Jordy first and try and dwindle down the singles. It's a difficult position, especially when we come to the point where the doubles could outweigh the singles very soon.
Yeah, except in this episode, we've seen Josh going to people saying, "Hey, we're going to vote for Sam. We're going to flush the
Mhm.
idol." And then also saying, "Oh, this is perfect because they'll never know it was me." It's like, yeah, they're definitely going to know it was you.
Yeah,
So I don't see those peers sticking together unless this was something they like some editing thing where they didn't show us that Sam and Mark asked him to do that or something. Otherwise,
yeah,
I don't see any way that those four stay together because knowing that Mark and Sam have one, possibly two idols, if they do stay together, you then you're really giving them a good run to the end. Like really getting to the point where you're going to have to make some moves.
yeah. And you're right. We do have two idols left in the game at the final nine. And really, it seems like no one's pointing their gun at Mark and Sam at the minute. Mark technically has both idols in the game. And it actually did bring up a point when I was watching it earlier this week, especially at the Jordy vote. I did wonder if the votes went the way of Sam. Would Mark have actually, if he knew that Sam was being threatened to be voted out, would he have actually played the idols? Because I think it is an interesting position, almost like Tai Trang in Survivor Kairong obviously held on to that super idol. And I think
Mhm.
Mark was almost in a similar position where he might not have played the idol for Sam, knowing that he had two idols. He had a guaranteed vote on the jury as well. And he was still in a strong enough alliance with the boys, where I think he almost could have gotten away with not playing the idol for Sam and letting Sam go out of the game.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that too, and I was thinking he might have done exactly the same thing because then that makes it even more convincing that they never had that
Mm.
second idol in the first
Yep.
place. Because you're thinking, well, if they had two, he surely would have played one for her.
Hmm.
He knows she's going to vote for him, and she's going to be like barracking other people on the jury to vote for him. Like I've been really, I've really noticed the way that she has been trying to, like, Jonathan will say something and she'll comment on it, and you'll see her like giving Chrissy a look or saying something to Dave about something that he said. Like there was one moment where, you know, I think at the end of tribal council, you know how he always says something before they go, and he said something like, well, you've got a good alliance, but good alliances don't really last forever or something. And she
Mm.
says, yeah, well, that's what you say.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I didn't really like it. Like, I'm not saying like great move, but I noticed it. And so if you have
Yeah.
her on the jury for you, you know, the whole time she's going to be like, well, I don't know about that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly thought that might happen too.
Yeah. And I think it is a situation where, you got the blood versus water. I mean, you got two players left in the game at the final nine, $500,000 on the line, two idols. What's the point in wasting one idol when you know that the vote could be pinned on them in the next episode, and it wastes it? And as you say, which is something I didn't even consider, it does present the fact that there may have been truth to that rumor of a second idol. So I think, yeah, ultimately, if the decision does come down the road, I think it might be best for Mark to hold on to both of those idols if he needs to, and really play a ruthless game, because it's not really going to hurt him, I don't think.
This is why I would struggle with blood versus water.
Yep,
Because
yep, yep,
more important things in the world.
yep.
You know, you'd want to have had some very thorough discussions before you went out about
Oh yes,
who
oh
would
yeah,
vote out
yeah,
who, what the
yeah,
scenario would be.
yeah.
Yeah,
The
that'd be
last thing you
tricky.
want coming out of the Survivor Blood vs. Water is a divorce, I think. But yeah, it certainly would be ugly. But you're right. You do have to have those discussions going into the game and understanding what different people will do. And I'm sure the discussion has come up between them that if the opportunity does present themselves, they are willing to cut one of them for the other. But you never really know,
Yeah.
because you never really know what people's motivations are. Because you're right, blood can be thicker than the water in the game, and that is what this season is here to test.
I wonder if Mark would be so happy for it to be cut the other way. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yep.
that. Yep. I can discussions possibly have been had, but yeah, I wonder. I wonder if Mark would be so happy to. Well, it doesn't make sense to use your idol on me. I'll go out on the jury and vote for you. I wonder if he would think it would make more sense for Sam to go out and support him. And I don't know. It's hard to know. Not knowing what goes on in someone else's like relationship or survivor
That's
alliance. Don't
that's
know.
that's right.
Don't
Yeah.
know. But that's just
And I
my
mean, even
suspicion that it might be different the other way.
yeah, yeah, you never know. And I think that Sam is probably the one that would be. I mean, after her move though, to get rid of Jesse, I think that it almost would come back the other way, and they'd think that Mark would have a better chance of winning the jury. But it is interesting, which way would it go, and how would it play out? But certainly, Mark has proven himself to be a challenge beast as well. We saw he did win an immunity challenge in the second episode of the week, which obviously just dispelled a little bit of the target off of him. And there was a funny moment here in the last episode of the week where Chrissy, we have had some funny moments with Chrissy in the season. She was really struggling with the idea of what is this twist called? Is it perjury? Is it the purge?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I think she figured out it was called the purgatory. And they had this discussion, what does purgatory mean? Of course, purgatory being that state between, well, that state of nowhere where you have to sort of repent your sins before going to heaven, or, coming back into the game of Survivor, reflecting on your mistakes. And that is something that plays out here with the Formidable Six ultimately sticking together. Disappointing to see no one make big moves, especially when we had all this talk with the promos of Juicy Dave's juicy move, which never really eventuated. I'm not sure if you
It
recall.
still might. Come on.
Yeah, it still might happen,
It's
but I'm not sure
brewing.
if you recall from Nick's
Immune
season,
switches.
season 1, Sue's big move. If you recall that, there
I
was a lot of
I
conjecture
do
about
remember
Sue's
Sue's
big
big move.
move.
Yeah.
I've brought that up many times this season. I always love to bring it up. Australian Survivor promised massive things, and then it never really lands at all. But I think we could see Juicy Dave really make a big move in this next episode. We never really know. But yeah, we did. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm suspicious because, as far as I know, he doesn't know much about Survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and he's
That's
really
correct.
and like he's learning, like, for sure. But even in some of the sort of social engineering he was trying to do around the idol and things, I don't know. I don't have that much faith that Dave's going to pull off some like epic game based move. But maybe. Happy to be proven wrong. My suspicion is that that's not gonna. I haven't seen the goods so far to make me think that's very likely.
Yeah, well, I hope, given the promos, that we do get to see a Juicy Dave big move. But you're right, he doesn't, from what we know, have that understanding of the game at its whole. It seemed like from the early days, it was Brianna's desire to go on the show, and that's why David was there. But certainly, it would be nice to see, and it's just disappointing to see, despite all this big talk around getting rid of Mark and Sam, splitting up the power couple, or even getting rid of Josh and Jordan. This Formidable Six stuck together to get rid of, well, Jordy, and then KJ, and then Michelle in the game. And ultimately, really, I mean, at that point, if Purgatory wasn't in play, Juicy Dave and Chrissy, I think they probably would have been safe, but Josh and Jordan, I'd imagine, would be screwed if Mark and Sam, knowing they probably have the better relationship with David and Chrissy, and having two idols. It probably would have been riding on the wall for Jordan and Josh at that point.
Yeah, well, I think Chrissy and Dave probably each think that they're going to be the third person in the final three
Yeah.
probably with Mark and Sam, and they might think that the jury is going to be really angry at Mark and Sam, and they'll get the vote. I mean, just guessing. I've got no idea what they're thinking, but yeah, yeah, it's just too much of a mystery.
Yeah, that's
you've
right.
got to think that's what those guys are thinking. They just tuck in and then they like get to the end. But like I was saying, like I said in my season, like just getting to the end isn't anything. Okay, it's not that it isn't anything. My biggest fear playing Survivor was that I would get to the end, and then at the final tribal, people would say to me, "Why are you even here?"
Yeah.
You know, I'm not even going to ask you a question because you're just the third person at the final tribal. Like, you're not even in contention. You know, you made it to the end, but like to what result? And yeah, I'm thinking Chrissy and Dave might be getting in that situation, but I don't know.
Yeah, which is hard to say because, I mean, everyone has their idea of how they're playing the game, and I think it is legitimate to make it all the way to the end. And no one goes to the end of the game without deserving to be there, because ultimately it's the social relationships that get you there. And finishing second or third or fourth or fifth or whatever position, if you do what's best in your mind
Yeah.
for your game, that means you're a winner in my books. I mean, I look to Survivor 42. I'm sure you watched the first episode. Zach obviously tried as hard as he could, but at least he played the game. At least he went out there and did what he set out to do. And I think that's all that matters in the end. But yeah, you're right. I do worry that David and Chrissy see themselves as that third person and someone that will come to the end simply because, I don't know, they cut each other or they win immunity in the end and they have a shot. I think they're almost scared to go out making big moves at 7.
Yeah.
They're more scared to go out making a big move at 7 than, ending the game in third without doing anything. I think that's sort of the mindset they're in at the moment.
Yeah.
And they might see themselves getting there.
Yeah, everyone has to decide for themselves what they want to get out of the game before they go in. And some people just want the experience. Some people, want to like represent their community or make their family proud, or some people only want to win, just a variety of reasons. And those reasons are all valid. And maybe you just do want to get like the highest place. But I just know for myself, I would have felt much happier finishing like ninth if I'd gone out trying to do a big move than finishing third and just getting like whitewashed. Like, so it's really, what comes down to, individual people. So I'm not trying to like rubbish anyone's games or motivations. I wonder if Chrissy and Dave, maybe because of their, like, both of them, actually, I don't think really super understand the game. Just from, I only know them from like their promo.
Yeah, I think they're both, neither of them are fans of the game going forward, and Croc
so
and Brianna were the fans. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not out of the question that they could think, how I don't know if Jonathan says it, but Jeff says, wow, final 8, 1 in 8 chance of winning the game. And I always think that's crap.
It's not the case.
You do not have a 1 in 8 chance of winning the game. Like 2 people have a really good chance of winning the game, and the rest of you maybe none at all. And and I wonder if Chrissy and Dave are falling into this. 1 in 3 chance. Like, if I get to the end, I'm going to do a really good job of explaining my thing, and just not have that sort of knowledge of the history of the game to sort of see the depth that might be needed to really. But I don't know. I hope they're really happy with where they end up and proud of what they did. And it's just, they can do what they want to do. It's just not what I would do.
That's right. And no, you're right. People do have different desires going into the game. I think for David, it was probably, I don't want to speak for David, but it seemed like he wanted to be there for Brianna and help Brianna achieve this goal of hers. And then for him, probably to do Brianna proud and make it as far as possible and experience all these things. So it is hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah, having your dad like make it to the final 3, like that's cool.
Yeah.
And like if I was in a Minecraft tournament and my son got kicked out of it, I'd try my best to like do the best
go as far as you can. Yeah.
I could do. Even if I didn't really know what I was doing, like it's sweet. And if Chrissy or Dave ever watch my season, they might just be like absolutely horrified. Be like, oh my gosh, you did what? Wow, winning is not worth being so deceitful or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that is something that people grapple with on Survivor. Do they want to, putting yourself in the public spotlight, do you want to be known as someone that deceives and makes all these big moves? Obviously, it's a game. It is contained to the island or the outback or wherever you are. It doesn't reflect who you are and what you do outside of the game. But I think that perception might be something that hurts the people who aren't as big a fan of the show. And it's, it is something that people grapple with. But yeah, I do like your point about the 1 in 8 chance to win a game. It's like flipping a coin, and one time it might be 50-50, then the second time you flip a coin, it's not necessarily 50-50 chance of getting the heads. The percentages of winning in the game shift as it goes on.
It depends if you're trying to predict it ahead of time. But yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. After my season, someone who played on my season with me came up to me and said like, oh, I can't believe what you did. Your family's going to be so embarrassed, so ashamed of you. Like, New Zealand's going to think you're a horrible person and all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, well, I don't really care what you think. It's fine. And it was fine.
That's right. I mean,
no one said anything to me about it. But, that person, the things I did in the game were, just beyond the pale. They couldn't even start to understand.
Yeah, that's right. And I think people have different perceptions of, what they can do. And I think some people care more about what others think, and others just say, I did what I did, and I, did what was best for me and my family. And I think that's ultimately what people like you go onto the show with the goal of doing. Tony Vlachos, of course, in Survivor US, he always goes out, plays balls to the walls, not afraid of what anyone thinks about him. Of course, I don't think anyone dislikes him because he's such a fun character. But I think people can respect players that go hard, and then you also get players, fans who don't respect it as well. And I think that's perfectly valid. I mean, it all comes down to what your perception of, of playing the game Survivor and what the best way to do it is. Going all the way back to Richard Hatch.
Yeah, on the Survivor New Zealand Facebook page, a lot of people thought I was a really bad person, but did not care. On the Survivor Sucks page, everyone thought I was super cool. So that was sort of like more my target audience, that's more my community than the people who got angry at me for voting out, all the athletic guys or something.
Yeah, I know it goes the same way for people who don't make moves, and they unfortunately get a lot of hate for not making moves as well, which is unfortunate
Yeah.
because I think, yeah, as to what we're saying, people will get different things out of the show. They'll have different goals, and some people might
Mhm.
think that the path they're taking is the best path. And for
Yeah.
some, as we saw with Mel and Michelle, they're just not getting shown enough, so we don't know their perspective of the game. We're only really seeing one view. It's always hard to compress 48 days, 24 different viewpoints into one hour episode a week, or three episodes a week in
Mm,
Australian Survivor's instance. But yeah,
is it as hard as they make it though? I mean,
it shouldn't be as hard. You're right.
I've
You're right. It shouldn't
edited
be as
things
hard.
before, and having a little checklist next to the screen of all the people and being like, oh gosh, who's this person? Haven't put
Yeah,
anything of them in here for 8 weeks now. Time to, like I don't know. I just think every episode, everyone should, you're giving those confessionals all the time. I heard
mm,
Gerald last week say, I was giving confessionals all the time, like, but they just
yeah.
didn't put it in. They've got the footage, but I mean, they must be on a really big time crunch. Is maybe another part of it as well.
Yeah, I think Australian Survivor is. I think there's only a couple months between each season airing, so that might be why. But then
Mm,
again, Survivor Cambodia in the US, they literally filmed that and came straight back and it aired.
yeah. Survivor
So
New Zealand, they started editing
yeah,
it before it finished.
yeah, that was the same with Australian Survivor season one as well. They edited it before it finished, which is where that mystery edit of Christie winning came from because I just didn't expect it. But yeah, you're right. Every person should get a confessional, in my view. Um,
Yeah, like
it
it's
is
an
disappointing.
easy thing to do because
Yeah.
they always get you to do like, yeah, you're saying like super important confessionals, but they always get you to do the stuff like, what did you think when you saw the challenge? How did you find the challenge? What's life been
Mm,
like around camp? So even if they just had a different person every week saying, wow, when I got to the challenge and I saw that it was wrestling, I thought, uh-oh, I'm not good at wrestling. Like
yeah.
they've got
Little
everyone
things
saying
like
that.
that.
Just like cut
Yeah.
it in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they've got the footage, but it just isn't there. But the end of this week, we do see the Purgatory Challenge. Jordy, Shay, and KJ obviously winning their way back into the game. Unfortunately for Michelle, she finds her place in the jury, and I'll bring up our little chart of the remaining players in the game. So we're down to 9 players now, Lisa. Two pairs left with Mark and Sam, and also Jordan and Josh, and 5 singles remain in the game. Obviously, we got Shay, Jordy, and KJ returning from Purgatory, and Chrissy and David. I'll say they are the minions of the Formidable Six at this point in the game. What do you think is the best move going forward? Let's say for these players returning from Purgatory. Do you think it's the right move to target Mark and Sam at this point, or because I'm not sure whether Jordy will actually. No, I don't think anyone will want to work with Jordy in the game because I think that people will view him as being someone who paints a massive target on Jordan and Josh, Mark and Sam, always painting a target on the next big meat shield. That I think he won't be able to rally those numbers because I think for Jordy to pull off what he wants to pull off, he needs to bring in a power couple at this point, and I think that's got to be Jordan and Josh.
Yeah, it's just this stuff is so hard because we don't know what people think of Jordy, and we
Absolutely,
don't know what
yeah.
people think of Jordan, and we don't know what people think of Josh. People might want to take Jordy to the end because he's alienated so many people, or they might be terrified of taking him to the end. And depending on what they think, it's entirely different moves to everyone.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but I think the three need to stay together because yes,
Yep.
they might each be thinking, "Oh, okay, well, if I can somehow take over the Chrissy and Dave spot, I'll be the person in the final three." But they have not built the resume. But it's hard to
Mm,
say that because the only reason why I say that is because they haven't been shown in the edit. So as far as
that's
I'm
right.
concerned, from an editing point of view, there's no way Shay or Chrissy or KJ win because we just
Yeah,
if they won, it'd be like, what on earth?
yeah. And
Just because we don't know about it.
Shay was actually my preseason winner pick, but I do think I agree with you. At this point, it seems like honestly, Mark or Sam is going to win.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's the perspective we're getting at this point. I think to your point of the three sticking together, I do think it's going to be an uphill battle for them to try and get those numbers. Simply from what we're seeing on the game, I do think it might be an instance of um, first one back in, first one out again. Um, I do worry that Chrissy and David are going to be satisfied with being third or fourth and not be
Yeah.
willing to make that move. And I think Jordan and Josh probably think their relationship with Chrissy and David is probably closer than what they might think. Or maybe the
Yeah.
opposite with Mark and Sam. Maybe they might think they're closer with Chrissy and David when in reality they're closest with Jordan and Josh. It's as you say, it is hard to read, where people stand in the game, what their best path is at this point, because we're not seeing that much of it outside of Mark and Sam.
Yeah. I mean, if it were me and just only knowing what I know from watching it on TV, I would Shay, KJ, and Jordy stick together, and they need
Mhm.
to provide like another group option for Chrissy and Dave. So
Yeah.
like, Chrissy and Dave need to know to go over to swap. And the thing is that KJ and Jordy and Shay, they don't have some big alliance. They're not people that have worked together. It's not a pre-existing group. So if Chrissy and Dave go over there, they might have some idea that they could find a spot in that group. It could
That's right.
like Chrissy could
Yeah.
go with the girls. Dave could go
Yeah.
with Shay and KJ. Like who knows? Whereas it's an existing situation with the 4 or the 2, and Chrissy and Dave will know they'll never be one of the top of that group. But
That's right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the
I think
way
for Chrissy
forward
and
from here.
Dave, they need to figure out one, which of the 2 power couples they're closest with. And I think Jordy, Shay, and KJ really need to hint at that and say, well, look, we've got another power couple who you don't have any relationship with in the game. You want to go with this power couple to the end. Let's get rid of one of them, and that gives you more agency in the game, so that you can get rid of a Mark and Sam down the line and try and work your way into that final 2. I think ultimately at this point, the best decision is to weaken those power couples and try and weaken that influence a little bit, so that the
Yeah,
singles have more power. But
yeah.
it
But
may be easier said than done.
even if they do that though, like so let's say they weaken Mark and Sam by getting out Sam, well then, Mark probably gets to the end with Sam on the jury,
Yeah.
and then so like for Chrissy and Dave, it's actually better to be at the end with like any mix. If they go to the end with Mark and Sam, if like let's say Chrissy goes to the end with Mark and Sam, she might be thinking that the vote will be split, but it won't be
Mhm.
because people will work out ahead of time if they're going to vote for Mark or Sam,
Yeah.
And then she's thinking, oh well, maybe it's better if it's Chrissy and Dave and one of Mark or Sam. That's bad as well because then the other person will be on the jury voting for
Yeah.
them, and Mark and Sam will still get the votes. Like it's just if they understand that any of those situations is a no-win for them, and if they even want to win, if they even think if that even is their goal.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a final 2. So I don't
Oh, is
think,
it?
unless, Australian Survivor has had a final 2 basically every season, which is another gripe of the show because I much prefer a final 3 because it does give, an alternative option.
Was it
I
a
think it
final
will be a final
three?
2 at the end. Yeah.
Who was the final 2 last year? I thought it was oh
So
sorry, All
All
Stars.
Stars, I wasn't going to
Yeah.
spoil that for you because I know you haven't seen Brains vs.
No,
Brawn.
I have
All
seen All
Stars,
Stars, so yeah.
All Stars final 2 was David and Sean were the final 2 on that season.
And did
And I think it
Moana
was
go
who
out?
was I'm trying to think who was the person that was cut before the end.
It was
Um,
Moana.
it was Moana. You're right. It was Moana.
But I
Yeah,
thought she
that's
was
right.
in the final 3.
No, she wasn't. But as Marcus Evans
Oh,
is saying here, it's pretty much a final 3. But yeah, final 2
okay.
at the end of the day. Yeah, Marcus Evans always contributing to the live chat. Always great to have him around. But yeah, final 2. So yeah, the question will be, you're right. There won't be a
Oh,
split
well,
vote
if
between
it's a
Mark and
final
Sam.
2, then 100%. You can't let
Yeah,
any
cut
I've been
someone,
going
cut
off the
someone.
wrong basis this whole time.
Yeah,
You
but
you
but
how have these
again,
pairs made it so far?
Chrissy and David, they don't know that either. It seems because they, as we said before, they're not the biggest fans of the show. They might not know that it's a final 2 and not a final 3.
It'd be in their
Um,
contract, though.
it would be. You're right, but then again, you don't. I don't know. We saw it in Survivor Micronesia season 16. You don't know what the Australian Survivor contract is like. When I was speaking
No, that's true.
with past contestants, I think the contract is pretty thin and it doesn't say too much in it, honestly. But you're right. You would think ahead of time you would know, but Australian Survivor especially love to be unpredictable. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens from here on out with Shay, Jordy, and KJ, and whether they can worm their way back into the game. And I do hope we see a big move. Just like you, we
Yeah,
really hope Juicy
me
Dave
too.
makes a big move this week, and we do get a little bit of a shake-up. So yeah, really looking forward to Australian Survivor. And next week, we will have the lovely Wei Chim on the podcast. Wei being from Brains vs. Brawn. Always great to have her on the podcast. Really looking forward to that one. Lisa, before we go, obviously we've got another season of Survivor on the air as well, Survivor 42 in the US. Did you have a chance to catch the premiere, and what were your thoughts?
Yes, I certainly did. I make it a big priority in my life, Thursday Survivor. What are my thoughts? I love the cast. I'm so happy they're having more diversity in casting. It just makes it, oh my gosh, so good. I don't like all the advantages and twists and things like that, because as already covered, I like to keep it a bit more vanilla and really let the players shine. That's all. I'm sort of excited to see how they may have learned from the twist. Like, I liked at the start how Jeff said, oh, we've kept some of the twists, but we've changed some of them. We've tried to learn from them. I mean, that's cool. Disappointed to see Jackson go. And Zach, because, super fans.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was a tough position for both Jackson and production to be in. Really unfortunate for anyone to have their journey cut short. But I think Jackson did seem content with the experience he got out of the game, which is great to see. I think for everyone to know they've at least had that experience. And as we said with David and Chrissy, everyone wants to get something different out of the game.
I was hoping that Jeff would say to them that they could come back for the next season, but he did not say that. But they have had a few. They're sort of building up another bank of people that have left a little bit early. So I'm hoping that we might see that in future seasons.
Yeah, well, we saw it in Philippines with Scoopin, Penna, and Russell Swan return. Yeah, so maybe we'll see another. Maybe Terry Dietz, Pat Cusack from David vs. Goliath, and Jackson, something like that. I don't know. It is always nice to see people get second chances. And I suppose on the topic of second chances, if you ever, you got the most out of your first appearance, but let's say they ever did an International Winners at War or a War of the Worlds sort of season, would you ever be open to returning again?
I think so, but the difficulty for me is, like I said at the start of the podcast, I've really changed a lot as a person since I was on Survivor. So I'm a bit worried that if I played now, there'd be a real tension. I think I would find it a lot harder to lie, and I think I would. It's quite a punishing experience. And even though I did win, one of the things I regret, I was so close in that season to just sort of throwing away my game and just going to the end with people that I really liked. And I don't know, I think if I played now, I might do that even more. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an internal struggle. Not sure. Well, I mean, yes, because it's Survivor, but I don't know if I would be the same. Might not be so.
Yeah, I'd love to see Australian Survivor casting open up to Kiwis in the future, because it would be really nice to see you guys get an opportunity. It is very sad that you guys, after only 2 seasons, got your show cut short. I mean, the first season, I always say it's the worst I've ever seen in Survivor, all versions of the English-speaking show. But certainly the second season was a big improvement. Second season was a big improvement on the first one. And, hopefully one day TVNZ or another network can get their act together and pick it back up. But yeah.
There's really only one network in New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly. TVNZ. Well, that's...
well, the people who made Survivor New Zealand really like Survivor, and especially in season 2, they really found their feet, and it's a beautiful season of Survivor, I think. I know I'm biased, but I think they made a good season. They cast people who are there to play, and they got so many of the notes right. And in an international season, it's hard to, because you're not American Survivor. You sort of have to be your own thing, but you have to bring in enough of it to make it. It's what South Africa does so well, although South Africa they're their own beautiful thing as well. But New Zealand Survivor, I would like to see it again for sure. I blame the winner. I think maybe if one of those athletic guys had won, more people would have got behind it.
Yeah, let's blame Lisa for cancelling Survivor New Zealand. That's not Treasure Island or whatever show it was that
Celebrity
replaced
Treasure
it.
Island.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm
yeah.
waiting for the call for that.
Well, maybe if you play Australian Survivor, you might get a call as a celebrity on
I'm
Celebrity
qualified to be a
MasterChef or
New Zealand
something.
celebrity.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. My cooking's like worse than my athletic prowess, so I don't know. I don't think I would last long on either show.
I think there's some pretty atrocious cooking in Survivor as well. People burning the beans and the rice all the time. I'm sure that's a point of contention in camp.
No, because I don't know. I don't know what happens in Australian Survivor, but like you don't have much variety, so you get pretty used to doing it.
Yeah,
Like it's pretty you sort of do it in your sleep. I don't really know how it can go too wrong. It's pretty
yeah.
boring. Yeah.
Hard to screw up boiling rice. I do recall in
Mhm.
Survivor Token Chains there was that instance with Coach saying everyone was cooking the beans wrong, but I think in Survivor every little thing can tick you off, right?
Yeah, it can. It can if you let it,
Yeah,
for sure. Because you're in a state of like extreme physical suffering, and you have about this much room for any.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really rough. It's really rough. Yeah.
mm,
Before we finish, there was something I wanted to say
yep,
that we haven't had a chance to say, and it's just that I love Michelle and Mel. I love them so
yeah,
much.
yes,
I
yes,
want them to come and visit me in Christchurch. I want to talk about Survivor with them. I want to follow them on social media. I want to play with them. I just want to do everything. But yeah, we did not see enough of them. But the bits we have seen, I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are exactly the people I like.
yeah. Well, I think from my
Stand out.
understanding, Michelle and Mel certainly have the same good connections with the cast and the wider community. I know Michelle was up in Queensland last week with Gerald and Juicy Dave
Yeah, I heard that. I was
for a
jealous.
party up there, and then Nina is in Australia now, and I know Nina and Michelle have been hanging out a fair bit. But yeah, it is a shame we don't get to see more of them, and we've been big fans on the podcast of Michelle and Mel. I mean, mainly for the fact they haven't got any airtime, and we just wanted to see more. But it's it is a shame that we don't get to see more of them. But yeah, they do seem like lovely people. All this cast seem lovely, and I think the thing about Survivor and the community is the castaways like yourself are always willing to reach out and come on a podcast like this, and we really appreciate that you coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can do it in the future with South Africa or maybe Survivor New Zealand coming back. Fingers
Survivor New
crossed on
Zealand
that one,
season
but
3.
I,
Well,
I, I
I'll be
won't
the
I won't
host
hold
of
my
that,
breath.
so I
You're
won't
going
be
to be
able
the
to say much
host. Yeah,
about
that's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Cheesy is completely gone off the face of the planet.
Oh
So
no, yeah.
you might
What
be.
am I suggesting?
Um,
No, don't worry. I can't possibly suggest replacing Matt Chisholm. I'll be the co-host.
yeah, well, I don't think Chizzy would. I think he just got a bit overwhelmed by the limelight, or at least what I've
No,
read.
no, he would
But
because he still hosts Celebrity Treasure Island.
okay, I didn't even know who was. Okay, I thought he'd just completely done a clean Haskell and just gone into the woods and just living off the grid. But okay, there you go. Yeah,
Well,
well,
he
you
lives
won't
on
be
a
replacing
farm,
Chizzy then.
but no, he still does TV. He does a lot of good work around like depression and farming communities, and he still hosts TV and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure. If they did a third season, I would never dream of replacing him.
Any social media or causes or anything you want to plug?
Just my Twitter's at Lisa Stanger, Stanger. Yep. So that's really the only place I ever do anything. And this isn't really a cause I want to plug, but it's just something that happened. So I live in Christchurch in New Zealand, and today's the third anniversary of the mosque attack that happened
Hmm.
down here. 51 people died. It was a big tragedy for the community, for the country, for the whole world, really. And so if anyone is interested in donating to that, or just looking up anything about it or anything like that, I really appreciate it. It's just I know this is just a small Survivor podcast, but anything we can do to help make things a little bit better, I'm all
Yeah.
behind. And it's just been like it's been a day in Christchurch today because it was a real tragedy. We lost all those people. But yeah,
No, it was.
that's my only thing to plug.
Yeah, it was big tragedy. I know Christchurch certainly suffered a lot over the last really 15 years, especially 2011 earthquake as well. I
Mhm.
haven't been to Christchurch in a long time. How is the rebuild going? Is things still
Pretty
getting built again?
good, but there's still you can still tell there's been an earthquake. There's
Yeah,
still absolute tons of empty buildings and things
yeah.
like that. So yeah, it's slow, but we're getting there.
Yeah, well, definitely go follow Lisa on Twitter. Check her out there. And Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. As I said, next week we will have Wei Chim on the show. It should be on Wednesday night, I think 8:30 p.m. But certainly make sure you subscribe to the channel and have your notifications turned on for that one, so you can find out when and where that is. And also Survivor 42 coverage. The Survivor buffs, Adam and Gideon, are continuing to cover this season. The next episode will be in 2 days, and I'm really excited to see how that goes. Determine who goes home next. Any predictions on who the next boot will be, Lisa?
Oh, no.
No, I don't either. Honestly, I was hoping you had something.
There's 3 tribes as well, so it's like,
Yeah.
like what even tribe? But I do think Drea is in a bit of a dicey situation, and I think Roxroy as well isn't really making any friends. He's like sort of a bit in a classic early boot situation, but.
Well, see, because I was about to do my power rankings, and I was going to put Drea in number 1 because she's got 2 advantages now. But it's I mean, people perceive things differently, so you never quite know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And as I said, Adam and Gideon will be there to recap it all. I'm not sure if they'll have a guest this week, but provided things go as normal, it should be up a day after the episode airs on the Survivor Buffs YouTube channel. So definitely check it out. And as always, guys, thank you for joining us on the live stream. We hope we see you guys next week. And we will catch you then with Wei next week for what is, I think, episode 18 and 19 coming up. Or actually, no, 19 and 20.
19,
we're getting near, getting near the end of the season. I think 3 more weeks to go. And I think the season will finish the week before Easter. I think the Monday before Easter, I think is going to be the finale. We will have a very special guest. I think the t-shirt might, if I get my mic out of the way, that might give some hints as to who we might have on the finale podcast. Luke Toki, at the moment, we're confirming dates around that. But fingers crossed we can get him on for the podcast. It's always fun having him. Anyway, we'll wrap it up here, guys. And thank you, Lisa, so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.